Last week, we showed you the new Mini interior design, and it is revolutionary. But the truth is, it's actually not as revolutionary or important as the digital experience that Mini is showing off finally for the first time today. We get an early look at this experience in Munich last month. We get to play with it, we get to see it in person, and it is exceptional. So let's talk about where this, of course, has come from. So when we think about the Mini and we think about the original Mini, it is simple. And that's really what the new Mini, this new electric Mini, has gone back to, is this utter simplicity. But of course, as we know, simplicity can be just surface level. What's going on behind it is really, really incredible and complex. This is Gabe from MotoringFile. Join us as we take an early look at this next generation Mini digital experience. So right off the bat, you can see this is a circular experience. It is an OLED screen. It's a small cutout, so not quite a circle. It is a full 240 millimeters wide. So that is, I think, about 9.5 inches wide. It's a little bit shorter, of course, because of that cutout. But as you can see, there is an incredible amount of dynamic quality to this, including, as we'll see, games, modes, themes, etc. So let's talk about the experience modes. We know driving modes from Mini. Sport, green, mid, that's gone. We are looking at something very, very different now. In fact, we're looking at a lot of them. So we're going to walk through each of them really briefly and show you how they really radically transform the look and feel of the car. And eventually we can talk about how that will interface with the drive. So let's start with go-kart. This is a cool, cool look, which is really kind of, I think, back to Mini's sort of fundamental sort of enthusiast qualities. Then we get into another look. This is core, this is personal, and you're going to see a lot more about personal. This is where you actually can upload your own image and you can make it look how you want. So let's get into the first, which is green. So we all know what green means. This is an electric car, so suddenly you're going to get a little bit more range, and there is a different probably throttle mapping here. We're not sure yet, of course, on that, but suffice to say, there is a different vibe that's happening inside. And let's take a look at some of the design here, and let's just take our time with this because, wow, like this is so incredibly different than what we've seen before from Mini. The nuance in some of the design, but also, they're not using skeuomorphism. They're not using things that, feel in a sense out of place. This is a really, really interesting aesthetic. And in a sense, what we're seeing here is a brand new design language from the brand. So now let's take a look at balance. Balance is the, in a sense, one of the de facto standards. It is a calming, certainly a calming mode. As you can see here, it's got that sort of deep indigo blue, almost navy at times. And cool here is you can actually see how things like navigation show up on the home screen. So when it's active, you can sort of get a peek into it, but it's not necessarily on. You can interface with all of the other apps, of course. You can see your phone's connected. You've got your display up top as well. So that is balanced. Now let's get into core. Core is the standard. So core, again, it's a sort of a bluish theme, a little bit of a teal, if you will. This is the one that we looked at last week when we introduced the interior designs, the one we were allowed to show. Again, this is what you're going to see when you start up the car typically. It is not offensive, and I think things pop really, really well. I think it's in a lot of ways one that blends more seamlessly into the actual car itself, the interior design, etc. One that you'll see a lot of. Next up, let's take a look at my favorite go-kart. Again, goes back to its roots, its enthusiast roots. You'll see the projector screen behind it, the projector behind it, which we'll talk about later, projecting onto that fabric dashboard, some interesting patterns in red. You see that really stark red, white, gray contrast. This is a motorsports derived theme. This is going to likely be coupled with quicker throttle mapping, slightly heavier steering. Who knows, maybe a drift mode. We will see. There's a lot to still be uncovered in the way this car drives, but these modes kind of hint at what's coming. Next up is personal, and this is what we talked about earlier. This is where you can actually upload your own image through the Mini app. So in a sense, you can create your own mode here. It's a little bit sort of early to define exactly all the things that you can create. Of course, color is something that we're not entirely sure of yet, But with this mode, and of course that big circular screen, you're able to create something that is you. And you can of course put like images of speedometers up there if you want. You can put images of your Mini. There's a lot you can do. And as you can see here, you can actually look at the interface and how you can flip through some of the photos that you've already uploaded as well. And again, some of these designs, the nuance behind them, you sort of see that blurred out image behind. And then here you've got that sort of mode where you've clicked into it. You can take a look at, of course, that little gear is your way to edit that photo as well. But what is amazing about this is just the crisp quality of the image. And I've seen it firsthand. I've sat in the car and I can assure you it is that crisp. It is really exceptional. You can't see pixels. Here you take a look at how that navigation would look. Again, sits on top with that image blurred out in the back. So you're starting to get a sense or sort of feel of that design language. Next up is timeless. I think a ton of people are going to dig this. So we get into that sort of cream aesthetic. See that sort of that wash of color from the projectors on the dash. We'll talk more about those projectors later. This harkens back to that original 1959 Mini, and it looks fantastic. So Mini's introducing a new typeface with this. It's actually not a new typeface, it's a Mini typeface, but it's a serif typeface. So again, this is a vibe that really, really feels quite different. And I think people are gonna love this mode. Now let's talk about Trail. And there wasn't a lot of information about Trail. I can only imagine we might see this in the Countryman. Maybe that's exclusive there. We're not quite sure yet. But right away, again, this is a little bit more rugged feel. This is about the vibe. What does it do to driving? We don't know yet, but it's cool. And I think in that regard, why not in a lot of ways? We're talking about personalization, of course. So next up is Vivid. This is exactly what you think. So a lot of really saturated colors, a lot of sort of things that I think would, of course, be construed as vivid, but at the same time, kind of punch up everything a little bit. What this does to the drive, we don't know yet, but what we do know is it creates a very different, a little bit more vivid, but I think a little bit punchier, a little bit brighter vibe inside. Going to be really cool to see how Mini leverages lighting throughout. We can see some of it, but not all of it yet, of course. And then finally, let's talk about that personal assistant. So a lot of people were really concerned about the Spike character. Well, I can now tell you that's not the only personal assistant. There's actually one that you're simply calling Mini. And so you can talk to your Mini and it is going to answer like Siri or like Alexa, and it's going to be able to actually interact, solve problems. And I think what's really interesting is actually control functionality of the car, open windows, unlock doors, change the station, all the sort of things that, you could theoretically do with buttons, turn heated seats on. So, in some ways, yes, Mini has gotten rid of some of those tactile buttons like heated seats. But in other ways, they're giving you more opportunity to leverage the personal assistant to interact with some of those features. We'll see how that works, of course. Now let's talk about gaming. Air Console is coming to the Mini. We first saw this in the BMW 5 Series. And this is Air Console, if you're not familiar with, is actually a company that this is what they do. And they've got a ton of great games. This is a legitimate offering from Mini. And I think people are going to really dig it. So of course, it has to be parked. You cannot do this while driving. You can also use your phone as a controller. So a lot of cool stuff in that one. So let's talk about the navigation experience, because we've really kind of glossed over this. The navigation experience is dramatically different. And having seen it firsthand, wow. What Mini has done here is like maybe the first time I could conceive of ditching CarPlay in some ways. Of course, it's going to have live traffic. It's going to have updates similar to Waze or Apple Maps or Google Maps, but it is built in, and there is an AR, an augmented reality feature in this, which is so exciting. You're going to see more of that soon. Sound design. Let's get into how this thing sounds. Mini has created an entirely new portfolio of sounds that will correspond with this new car. Let's take a quick listen. As you can hear, it's very futuristic. What we have is something that kind of reimagines the whole notion of driving and in what kind of, sort of reaction you get to inputs. It's really exciting to see Mini going to this depth, and you're also getting another view of this interface in action, which, in our eyes, having seen this in person is amazing, but being able to really describe it or show you it is what's really cool. Description only goes so far. As you can see, each of these themes have dark modes as well for, of course, nighttime driving, so you're going to see a lot more of those type of images soon. But the sound design team went to great lengths to create something that's really, truly unique, but more importantly, mini focused. The sound design team also went to the past and actually recorded sounds from the 1959 Austin Mini, the original, and the 2006 Mini GP. Pretty cool. So there's a ton more over at MotoringFile, including all sorts of information about the technology stack, how CarPlay and Android Auto works, and a ton of stuff that's coming. So go check it out. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and head over to MotoringFile for way more information.